To save a life, I've drunk 3-day-old urine of an elderly grandmother. I can see you're thinking that's just the entry point for a humanitarian aid worker. Possibly. But in this situation, I was with a Tibetan medicine doctor high up in the Himalayas. He was using his taste buds as a diagnostic tool, and so was I. But for the past 20 years, I've been a frontline, boots on the ground, humanitarian aid worker. I have worked in Africa, in Asia, and in South America. In the snowy Himalayas, the deserts of the Sahara, and the jungles of the Amazon. I've worked in war-torn countries, in refugee camps, and post the most major catastrophic disasters in the last 20 years. The Asian tsunami, Pakistan earthquake, Nepal earthquake, Philippine typhoon, and currently in the Caribbean after Hurricane Irma and Maria. I've escaped from a rebel army. I've had a rifle in my head twice. I've nearly died of hypothermia. My face slashed open with glass and had to sew it up myself. No medical aid available. And I've lived in a war-torn country where every single day I thought was my last. But I love what I do so much. 18 years ago, I sold everything I own. My house, my car, my paintings, my books. And to this very day, I still own just the contents of one suitcase, which is currently here in Belfast. Can you imagine that, ladies? But there's certain times in our lives when we remember exactly where we were when an event took place. For me, it was when the Twin Towers fell, when Princess Diana died, and when the Asian tsunami happened back in 2004. I was in Tashkent in Uzbekistan, and I saw this disaster unfold on my computer screen. Waves 100 foot high, 230,000 dead, affecting 50 countries. And I had one thought, that I must go. So I bought a one-way ticket to Phuket in Thailand, got into a taxi and started to wend my way to the worst hit area. It looked like a nuclear bomb had gone off. Cars thrown on tops of houses, resorts crumpled like matchboxes, glass and debris everywhere. And I said to the taxi driver, "You just have to stop." I got out of the car, I walked to the edge of the cliff, and I looked over, and I wished I hadn't. The sea was full of dead bodies. I came back from the edge of the cliff, and I collapsed, heart pounding, sweat trickling down my neck. Hot and humid Thailand with decomposing bodies. I just wanted to vomit. And then all of a sudden, I was catapulted back to when I was an 18-year-old nurse, and my matron stood there in a stern face and a starched white apron. And she said, "Linda, this is not about you. You are here to serve. You are here to make a difference." With that, I got back into my body and back into the taxi and headed to the worst hit area. As I got there, 5,000 Thai people had been put in a survivors' camp. As a nurse, I went straight to the first aid tent. Can you imagine being hit by a washing machine coming at 50 miles an hour as this wave hit them? The injuries were horrendous. But there came a moment And a lady came up to me and with outstretched hands said, "Linda, please take my baby. I can no longer feed her." And I looked straight back into her eyes and I said, "No, I will not feed your baby. But I promise you that I will enable you to feed your baby." A hand up, not a handout. Handouts are fine at the beginning, blankets, food, tents. But we needed to bring back dignity, independence, self-esteem to the people. And I knew I had to do something urgently. So I ran up to Bangkok and I asked the British ambassador to throw a party for national and international business leaders. I told them the situation. I said, we have 5,000 Thai people and they've lost everything. Their homes, their livelihoods, their loved ones. And the places of work, their hotels, completely destroyed and unlikely to ever be rebuilt. And they need to earn money now. They can't relocate, they're low educated. I need people to come with me and help me to solve this problem. How can they earn money now? Hands shot up. Business leaders love a challenge. 4 came with me to the front line. They sat with the people. They talked to the people. They looked at the geography. They went back to Bangkok. A week later, I got a call. They'd come up with a solution. I was so excited. They had noticed, lining the coast where the wave hit, still stood acres and acres of rubber trees. And these are business people. They'd done their research. Business was viable for the next 10 years. So I said, how much is it going to cost? And they said, well, for a cooperative of 4 families, to make rubber, they just need a coconut shell, knife to scour the tree, and a rubber mangle. Total cost, $250 US. So then I checked it out with the community. Do you know how to make rubber? Do you want to make rubber? And they said, yes, of course, our grandparents harvested rubber, but we were lured by tips and hotels, and we left it behind. So they started to work. Within 4 months, they were earning 3 times the amount of money they ever earned in the hotel industry. It wasn't my idea. All I did was to facilitate bright brains to come, to see the problem, and to take action. We all need someone to believe in us, to cheer us on, to be our mentor. And I was very lucky. Early on in my career, I had 3 amazing mentors. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Sir Richard Branson, and Prince Charles. Prince Charles came to visit me in a refugee camp in India. And I'd started working with the private sector, and I was really keen, desperate to share with him my model. And he said, Linda, when business leaders meet you, they'll be so inspired by your enthusiasm, they'll get out a check, write a big fat check for you, and hand it over. And he said, do not pick it up. And I said, why would I do that? He said, leave the check on the table. The most important thing is them, their business skills, their entrepreneurial skills, their innovation, their perspective, their compassion, their empathy. And his words were, if they do not want to engage, leave the check on the table. And this is the model that I've used throughout my 20-year aid career. Well, some of you might be curious as to how I ever started this journey. Well, at 16, I met the love of my life. At age 20, I was married. At age 24, I had two beautiful children, Gail and Graham. By the age of 28, my marriage had failed and I was divorced. And I had an amazing career. I was a nurse. But it didn't pay the bills and the shifts were horrible. So I started to look for a job. And I found one that had company car, subsidized mortgage, and a really big salary. And I'm like, right, that's for me. I'll be able to take care of my children. It's going to be great. And every day, I noticed I was coming home from work and I was drinking a bit more or crying myself to sleep. But I was being super mum. I was taking care of my children. So I just continued. Until one day, I was driving from the north of England to the south after a sales conference, a dark winter's night, stabbing pains behind my eyes, and the curtains came down, and I went blind. I don't know how I didn't kill myself. Angels, intuition. But as I sat on that hard shoulder, terrified, angry, why me? What have I done? I'll never work again. I'll never see my children again. I started to pray to a God I hadn't thought about for a very long time. And I said, if my sight comes back, I promise I will find what I was born to do. Now, I was lucky. My sight came back, and the doctors called it hysterical blindness or stress blindness. But I promise you, I kept my word. And 2 years later, when my son went to the army and my daughter went to university, I sat them down on the sofa and I said, can I leave home now? Because I'd realized that I didn't want to stay in safe, sanitized England. I wanted to care for people and help people in the worst places on earth. So that was when I sold everything I own until this very day. And I'm very lucky because my children are my biggest cheerleaders, as are my 6 grandchildren. But when I look back on my career, probably my time in Pakistan was the most challenging, but also the most rewarding. I arrived after the Pakistan earthquake and could see that there was chaos. I went out into the remote villages and there was terrible poverty. But in my normal model, I was looking to see which of the business leaders, which of the industry leaders would step forward to see if they could help. And in this situation, it was the milk industry. Pakistan at the time was the 6th largest producer of milk in the world, and they couldn't access it. So they asked me to be the go-between. Would I go into the villages, see the problem, and see how they could access more milk? So when I went to the villages, at the time the government were not paying the teachers or the doctors. And like any parent in this room, what do we want? Education and healthcare. But they needed cash to be able to pay for it. And the milk industry said they would be happy to come to the villages, form cooperatives, because at the time the farmers had 1 milk, 1 cow, 1 milk, 1 cow, and it was just separated, completely scattered throughout the whole of the rural places. So the milk industry stood up, came forward. They took their milk carts to the villages every single day to collect the milk, and they paid the farmers every single day. It was win-win. The farmers had the money to pay the teachers and the doctors, and the milk industry had their milk. As I'm sure you can tell, business as a force for good is something that I am totally passionate about, that I really champion daily for the past 20 years. And I believe there has never been such an important time for business leaders to be of service, to contribute towards people, planet, and the places we live in. For the best, brightest, and most diverse brains across all sectors to step forward and share intelligence and innovation to help solve our world's most critical social and environmental problems. Governments and charities cannot do it alone. The most innovative brains are in the private sector. And the great thing is, we are all different, all unique. We all have our own perspective. And this is the jewel. Never, ever forget that. It's our difference and our approach and our understanding that is so very, very important. Contribution is the greatest human need. And I've seen this in evidence year on year. So I really know and I believe that we can be profitable whilst helping our planet. Can you imagine if every company in the world adopted one, maybe two problems? With the help of government, we really can solve the world's problems. We're all busy people. Lives are stressful. So with my expertise in the private sector, I've developed certain programs for companies to be able to engage easily and have fun whilst developing their people and their organization. The first one is called Race for Good. Highly competitive, fast-paced competition where teams compete to solve a critical issue. The last one was with Sir Richard Branson on Necker Island just before Christmas, where he threw out me Virgin Galactic astronauts and Olympic athletes as well as entrepreneurs. He loved it. The second one is called Be the Change, business leaders on the front line. When business leaders come with me to the front line and in between 3 to 5 days actually solve a critical issue within that time and implement it. Companies are using these programs as leadership programs in their HR departments for emerging leaders, their high potential to retain and engage staff. When KPMG worked with me, they had the most amazing byproduct. Their staff worked with me for 6 months, just 1 day a month. And guess what? During that time, their productivity went up. Time and time again, contribution is the greatest human need. There is no need for us not to realize throughout every cell in our body that we can do good and still keep our companies profitable and growing. So I say to you, what is your company's focus? Is it construction, accountancy? What is the skill within your community? Accounting, marketing, communication. What is the burning issue that you are tired of hearing about? Solve your own problems. Gather yourselves together. Because actually, as Prince Charles said, it's not about money. As my Thai business leaders did, it's all about innovation and intelligence. You come with nothing and you go with nothing. Don't look for heroes. Be one. How do you want to be remembered? Thank you very much.